Okay, so Genesis 3. We'll be in Jeremiah just a little bit for the half-Torah portion, and also in a few verses in James. And so just as a review, I want you to remember this. Let's go back. We're going to pick up a verse in chapter 28. And Chris, you can read that. You're real close with a big loud voice, so we pick you up.
Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God."
Okay, Jacob said that 20 years prior to today, when he was on his way to Padam Aram, and he just had the Jacob's ladder incident, if you recall. That's what he said. If God will be with me on this journey, will give me food and bring me back here, then he will be my God. Okay? And today, right off the bat, I want you to notice in verse 3, it says, "Then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." It's kind of an answer to a prayer 20 years before. Do those two verses go together? Those two statements go together. And Leonard, for your benefit, that your fathers there, that's the first use of your fathers in the scripture. He's referring to the land of your fathers. And those fathers would be Abraham and Isaac. He's talking to Jacob. So Abraham and Isaac, yep. Okay, so this Torah portion closes the Jacob-Laban cycle. Somebody say hallelujah. Okay, God speaks to Laban in a dream to ensure Jacob's protection, and even as God spoke to Abimelech to ensure Abraham's protection. So that kind of got repeated. How many of you know that things go in cycles? Are we convinced yet that things happen in cycles? They happen in cycles. God, if it's happened before, it's going to happen again, kind of a thing. Okay, so I titled this portion, Leah and Rachel Finally Agree, or Stand by Your Man. Okay? If you look real close, the man is made up of a whole bunch of people, because Jacob's family is going to become very, very large. You are part of Jacob's family. That's why you're even here today. Okay? So, Stand by Your Man is a 3-act play. And it breaks down like this. Act 1, Jacob overhears Laban's sons complaining about his prosperity. Verses 1 through 3. Act 2 is Jacob's conversation with his wives. And Act 3, Laban catches up with Jacob and confronts him for his departure. And this is the most dramatic of all the themes. Thank you. So here, this is a situation where Jacob is returning to the land, and so here he is up here in Haran. Okay, so here's Israel, modern day Israel. Here's Damascus way up here. Okay, so he's like 500 miles away from home. Remember? 500 miles. He's a long way from home. He's got to bring this family all the way back down here to Beersheba. Okay? So what we need to know always, as in our Torah portion today, God leads his chosen ones back to the land. I got to thinking about this. It's like this piece of land is like the game board. If you were to play a game board with a bunch of people on a Sunday afternoon or something, the checkerboard, it's the game board that things get acted out on, or the stage that the play gets acted out on. Always, he puts the land at the center of their attention and of his attention as well. In all ages and at all times, everyone who is genuinely part of Israel is on her way or his way to the land. Either in the theater of your mind or in an airplane seat. But that's going to become a desire in everyone who's genuinely part of God's land. There's very few believers that you will run into that say, "No, I don't have much I don't have much interest in going there." I would go, but it's really a rough trip, and it's too expensive, or it's too this, or it's too that, or it's something. You might have, but deep down inside in your heart, it's like it's calling your DNA home to go and see it. And once you get there, how many of you have been there? Bob hasn't been there. That's too bad, Bob. Have you been there?
Israel.
Once you've been there, did not, Angie, tell me, did that not feel like home? Did that not feel like you belonged there? Like there was an attraction? Yeah, okay. All right. I hope that we can feel for or understand Jacob. I mean, I guess I asked that as a question, can we? He's been a very faithful worker in his father-in-law's house for 20 years now. This guy he's been faithful. And yet it appears that he continues to find himself in precarious situations. That's kind of Jacob's life. He's always in some kind of a predicament. Okay? It's always, let's see. Are you always in some kind of a predicament?
There are times when I think I...
There are times when are you always in some kind of a predicament? Bill, you're always in some kind of a predicament, right?
It sure feels that way.
It sure feels that way. It's an ongoing, our lives are an ongoing soap opera, somehow or another. And it's nice to know that the director of our lives is just right off stage, right? Or right off stage right or something. So God's been watching out for his chosen one, and he now turns to Laban's trickery against him. And Laban has done everything possible to get rich off of Jacob's toil and his talent over the last 20 years. And we'll get into that today. And what happens? Jacob he comes out the better as well as the richer or more wealthy. He comes out of this land, this 20-year sojourn here, as a very wealthy man. So here we go. This is how we're going to break it down. And Steve, we're going to, verses 1 and 2, let's just do that. Jacob recognizes that Laban's family has begun to despise him. 31, 1 and 2.
Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all his wealth from what belonged to our father." And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been.
Okay, it's not what it was before. Okay. It wasn't that Jacob had taken anything that belonged to Laban. Rather, it was that Jacob's wealth was increasing in proportion to Laban's wealth. Laban was a wealthy man. Jacob had started out with nothing 20 years ago, and his wealth is going up and up. What is his wealth in? Where is he making what's making him wealthy? Sheep, livestock. The problem wasn't that Jacob stole. It was that Laban's sons were filled with envy. So this passage literally pits Laban's sons against his daughters, because Laban's sons are the brothers of Laban's daughters. Does that not follow? I think that's how that works, right? Okay. The sons are angry that Jacob has become wealthy at the expense of Laban, and the daughters, ironically in unison this week, seem to recognize Jacob's wealth as their inheritance. They didn't fall off they didn't come down in the last shower. They didn't fall off the turnip truck last night, okay? These gals are savvy, okay? And Laban's sons have become jealous and angry at Jacob. And Laban's attitude is no longer friendly towards Jacob. So I've got a little sign up here. It says, what are the other words for envy? And the Professor Dove says, begrudge, envious, jealousy, covet, covetousness, grudge, crave, resentment, spite, and ill will. Those are all the kind of attributes that are being expressed towards Jacob at this time. Oh, pigeons. They're pigeons, okay. They're homing pigeons. So verse 2, essentially they're saying, yikes, it's time to go. Laban has changed his wages 10 times. It's time to go. Laban's not favorable. And the wives, Jacob calls his wives for a family meeting, and they're discussing this, and they're going, yeah, this isn't good for us to be here anymore. Let's go. Okay, so let's try 3 through 13. Jacob convinces Rachel and Leah that it's time to leave. I don't know how much convincing he had to do, but that's what these next verses are about.
Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where the flocks were. He said to them, "I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know what I've worked for. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said, 'The speckled ones will be your wages,' and all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said, 'The streaked ones will be your wages,' then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw the male goats mating with the flock, were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in that dream, 'Jacob.' I answered, 'Here I am.' And he said, 'Look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now, leave this land at once and go back to your native land.'"
Okay, at once. That's like get out now. Okay, now I'm going to play my favorite role, and my favorite role is connoisseur of the obvious. And I've been teaching this for 20 years now, and I finally got it. That's good. That's good. Things are looking up. I'll show you. They've come into agreement. Rachel and Leah feel like strangers from their father. The word is nokri, means foreigners. They feel like foreigners to their father. They're willing to leave their father and to return with their husband to his home. They've come into agreement. The husband and wives are in agreement. That's an important thing, right? So we're going to have a, whatever, they're going to have a road trip. It's time to get out of here. That's not the obvious thing yet. We're not to the obvious. Just a minute. So God is giving instructions and divine help to Jacob. Your father's not friendly towards me. It's time to go. Okay, this is the obvious part. And I'm going to put it in sections here because I'm going to start this off by saying it's right here in the Bible. And it made me ask, God, when did you put that in the Bible? It's one of those things. You ready? We wonder how in the world he got all these different kinds of striped or streaked or spotted or whatever. That's been a thing of discussion for a long, long time, but it's right here. Let me just... You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. Okay? Here's the answer. If he said, meaning, if Laban said, the speckled ones will be your wages this time. Remember, he had the right to change them. He changed them 10 times, so they had at least 10 crops of babies. Then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. You suppose God had something to do with that? Yeah. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then guess what? That next flock of bunch of babies, they were all streaked. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. Does that make sense? Whatever Laban said, this is, all right, the next crop of babies are going to be yours, are going to be all you had to do was say it, and that's what God arranged for them to be. Because God can do that because he's God. That makes sense? Oh yeah, duh. Okay. Laban was decreeing it, yeah. It will be as you say. There you go. Yep. All right. That's how Jacob came to have such a big herd. And he even showed it to him in a dream. He even showed it to him. All right. So the life situations that confronted Jacob seem all too familiar to us, okay? He's got struggles in relationships, and he's got economic problems, and he's got employers that just don't understand, and so on and so on and so on. It's, but with the family members, when trust is broken, it's a big deal. Right? When trust gets broken, this is a really big deal. Rachel steals the family gods, and Jacob is not aware of what Rachel has done. God warns Laban in a dream not to do anything to harm Jacob's family, okay? I think I forgot. I think I might have missed. Yes, I did. 14 to 16, did we do that? 14 to 16. Steve, let's do that. Let me do that.
Then Rachel and Leah replied, "Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you."
Okay, do whatever he tells you. Trust gets broken. Rachel and Leah, do we have anything, any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Do we have anything? They're realizing they don't have anything. Laban has taken it all. Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what he paid for us. Okay? Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and to our children. So they're realizing it. So here we go. Never lie to someone who trusts you, ever. Don't ever lie to anybody, but never lie, especially to someone who trusts you. And on the other hand, never trust someone who lies to you. That's a two-way cutting street, okay? I'm going to do this one, I think. So these girls were not, this is something we want to get a hold of. These girls were not given in marriage like you would normally think of giving someone in marriage. They were not given in marriage to Jacob by their father. No bride price in money was paid by Jacob, and no dowry was given. Laban had stolen any dowry of the daughters. A dowry, a bride price is something that a groom pays for a bride. A dowry is something that a bride brings to the marriage and is, by the bride's family, right? And is given in case something happens and they get divorced or he dies or whatever, she'll have some kind of an inheritance, right? Okay. That wasn't true. They were sold literally as chattel. It was a business deal. Jacob got wives and Laban got a servant. And Jacob sold his time. He worked for 14 years for nothing. And then he worked another 6 years, right? Right. Rachel and Leah figured out that no part of their father's estate would ever be theirs. So Rachel took it upon herself. Here, you get dumb. Here you go, you get dumb. Okay. She took it upon herself to steal the family gods without telling anyone, including her husband Jacob.
What were the family gods?
We'll get there. I'll show you. Okay, how about, now I can go back. I think I had my orders out of place here. So how about 17 to 21?
Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, crossed the Euphrates River, and headed for the hill country of Gilead.
Okay, so let's see. So is that a bad deal? I mean, the guy hates you. Should he have stopped, turned around, and go and said, "Hey, Laban, guess what? I'm leaving." What would you have done? I put myself in that situation. I thought, well, number one, I wouldn't have stole the family gods. I wouldn't have done that. No. What would you have done, Myra?
Somebody hated me like that?
Yeah, somebody hated you like that. Would you? You wouldn't tell them? I wouldn't. You would. Let's get the stuff and let's get out of Dodge, right? How about you, Sully? What would you do if you were Jacob? Would you go back and tell your father-in-law?
Yeah.
No, not so much. Would there be anybody here that would turn around and go, you know what, can we just reason this out? You're really not a very nice to me, and you've been swindling me, and I don't think so. And your son, yeah, I can go eat worms and all that stuff, right? Everybody hates me. But that's what it said. Steve read that to us. He said Jacob deceived him. Mine doesn't say that. Yours did. Like verse 20, what does it say?
So, he fled with all he had. Oh, 20. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban and Aramean by not telling him he was running away.
See, mine doesn't say that. What version are you reading? Mine says, and Jacob stole away, unknown to Laban the Syrian, in that he did not tell him he intended to flee. Do you always tell anybody your intentions of what you're going to do?
No.
You don't, do you, Terry?
No.
Lee, do you?
Try not.
You try not. Lee plays his cards close to his chest. Yeah.
That shows again for people that want to say that Jacob is a deceiver.
Yeah, it just gives him more ammunition. What version are you reading from before you? That's why. Okay.
Spanish Bible says he fled.
He fled.
It doesn't even say he stole. It just says he fled.
Well, he stole away as to flee. Okay. Your Spanish version says that. Let's go with the Spanish version. I like that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is an NASB.
NASB.
It says deceived, but then there's a
note.
a little note that says that actually should be translated as stole the heart of Laban.
He's okay because he's taking his family. All right, that I could go with. That makes a little sense. Stole the heart. Okay, because you know what I think? I really, really, really think that Jacob is done with deception. I think he's done with it. He's so over deception. But he is going to take. But he's not going to be a namby-pamby guy either, right?
Also, when stealing away without telling them, you always a certain conflict that you know is going to happen.
It would just be setting something up. Yeah.
So it's best to just not tell them.
Go.
what's going
Yeah,
on.
and go. Okay. Right. Yes.
Mr. Miyagi say.
Mr. Miyagi say. What does Mr.
Best defense for punch, no beating.
Say that again for the tape. Mr. Miyagi.
Mr. Miyagi say, best defense for punch, no beating.
No beat it. I love that. Lee, will you be sure, and this is just a side note, but would you be sure to bring Mr. Miyagi to Israel with us when we go? All right. All right. All right. So what's the big deal with stealing the family gods? This is really interesting. The custom of the day, in their culture, the custom was that whoever had possession of the household gods had the inheritance rights. Not the blessing. I mean, right? Whoever had the gods had the blessing, had the inheritance rights. And Rachel thought she was justified in taking them. My goodness, Dad has just stolen everything from us, so I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to take it, which is called stealing. Right? Okay. Yes.
I'm sure they were like plated in gold and they were valuable, not just that they were gods.
Right.
You probably didn't care about the whole god part, but
They could.
I'll take these gold and silver plated things.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought they just made them out of pot. Okay, interesting. Okay, all right. Well, watch this.
How about solid gold?
It's even better, right? Or worse. All of a sudden, can you see why? And this is before the tablets from the mountain, obviously. There's no Moses yet. He's not for another couple hundred years. But can you see why "you shall have no other gods before me" appeared on those stones? Let me just bring the stones up. Can you see why "you shall not make any graven images" are on the stones? Can you see why you shall not steal? Can you see why "you shall honor your father and your mother" is on there? Can you see why "you shall not lie" or bear false witness? Can you see why "you shall not covet"? Look at that. 6 out of the 10 are right here in this situation. Wow. Let that sink in. This is 200 years before. This is all part of the, people should know better, right? Even back then, even before Moses even was a baby. Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't you say she was a little angry?
I would say she's a little, yeah. Yep, I'd say she's a little angry.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Because she's gone through a whole lifetime, basically, of being linked up with her sister,
Okay.
with the same husband, and the whole situation her father created because he was stealing the wealth.
He was stealing the wealth.
Because he wanted money.
He essentially stole her husband from her, right? The one, right at the beginning,
So
right?
she's just seared. She's just seared.
Seared.
So yeah, it's like her
Yeah, you're
father
right.
was just seared.
Yeah.
And so if that household god was equivalent to her inheritance, well, no wonder she.
That's right. She felt justified.
Yeah, it's money.
Yeah.
Money.
See, we can feel justified when we're left to our own devices. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. When we're left to our own devices, we can justify everything, anything. It's nice to have something to refer to.
Plus, women didn't have any rights then anyway.
No, no. That's right. Yeshua did more for women's rights, if you will, when he came along. When he entered the picture, he's the one who lifted up the head. He's the one who said, "Hey, your sins are forgiven." He's the one who said, "Here, I'll heal you." Right? He did, yeah. Okay. All right. How about 22 through 30? Take us through that one, Steve. This is about, Laban is going to pursue Jacob once he finds out what's going on. He rebukes him for leaving, and he accuses him of stealing his household idols, because he figured that out pretty quick when he got home. He had been 3 days out, set this up, he had been 3 days out in his own sheep herd, what do you call it? Fleecing, cutting the wool off, fleecing the sheep, shearing the sheep, thank you. And now he comes back, and now it's going to take him some time to catch up with his family that seems to have just disappeared. 22 through 30.
On the 3rd day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him on the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me, so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you have gone off because you longed to return to your father's household. But why did you steal my gods?"
Okay. There were at least 2, if not 3 more times that word was used. Steal away or deceive. Why did you deceive me? In verse 26, and Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done that you have stolen away?" And the NIV says that you deceived me. You have stolen away. You have snuck away. And then there was one, and then there was one other one where the word is used is stole again. Y'all see it? I can't see it.
27 maybe?
27? Yep. Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me? And Steve said, and deceive me again there, but it's about stealing away, sneaking away. Okay. So here we are. That's about the kind of, I love the expression on that. I could probably captured it pretty well. 3 days later, he found out about it, and 7 days of chasing, and on the third day, he takes over him. He catches up with him after pursued him for 7 days and caught up with him in the mountains of Gilead. So they had made it quite a ways. Here we go. Now, each guy's going to have a say-so. Laban's say-so is right now. Here's Laban's say-so. He's going to get to put his 2 cents worth in, and Jacob is going to stand there very calmly, and just listen. You can stand there very calmly and just listen when you haven't done anything wrong, right? Right? You can just calmly, right?
You stand there.
Yep, you stand there. Okay.
Play all their cards.
And all right, so he's going to wait for him to play the cards. Here we go. You've stolen and you carried my daughters captives. Why did you flee and steal from me, my gods? I would have sent you away, all that stuff. You've done foolishly. It's in my power to do you harm, but God, can you imagine what kind of he doesn't know God. Laban does not know God. And God kind of sneaks up on him in the night and says, excuse me, I'm interrupting your dream, and I don't want you to catch up with Jacob. I don't want you saying anything, good or bad. Just don't do it. It won't, And he believed him. Has God ever come to you in a dream? You think? Yes? Anything you can share? No? You knew it was God? Yeah?
Yeah, I was just
It's very vivid.
sitting on a park bench with Yeshua. The park bench was made of pink crystal. Behind us was a crystal sea. And we were talking about how all the people had forgotten all the turmoil and trouble that they had gone through.
Because he threw it in the sea? Oh, nice. Nice. Good. All right. Why did you steal from me?
So I kind of hung up on one thing.
What are you hung up on?
It took Laban 3 days to notice he was missing.
Well, he was out 3 days. Well, no, he was out 3 days. 3 days out shearing the sheep. So by the time they got out to him,
You know what this sounds like to me?
what does it sound like? Comment, please. Comment away.
Go and search for the child, and when you find him, come back and tell me, so that I may come and worship him too.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. You're right.
That's right.
Right. Sounds just, those are words spoken by Herod, right?
First 10 people who believe that stand up.
I would have sent you away with joy and songs and, yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah. Notice he doesn't say anything about his grandchildren up here. Whatever. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. All right. Laban searches 31 to 42. Let's see what he does. What kind of a job he does searching. 31 to 42.
Jacob answered Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live.
Oh.
In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me. And if so, take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the 2 female servants, but he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now, Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent, but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period. So he searched but could not find the household gods. Jacob was angry and took Laban to ask. What is my crime? He asked Laban. How have I wronged you that you hunt me down now that you have searched through all my goods? What have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine and let them judge between the two of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you.
All right. Jacob's response. His first response was, I thought you'd take your daughters back by force, and whoever took your stuff will die. What happened to Rachel?
Died in childbirth with Benjamin.
With Benjamin, right? Go ahead and look. See if any of your stuff is here. Okay, so Laban looks everywhere and for his gods, and he confronts Jacob, and Jacob tells him whoever stole his gods will die. That was supposed to be hidden. The other one was supposed to be hidden. And Rachel's sitting on him. So let's apply the same standards to Laban. Okay, it's what's fair is fair. Did Laban break any of the commandments? You shall have no other gods before me. Yep, he did that one. How about you shall not make any graven images? Yep, he did that one. How about you shall not steal? Yep, he stole from Jacob, didn't he? How about honor your father and your mother and your family? You know, he wasn't doing a whole lot of that. How about you shall not lie? Yep, he was doing that. And you shall not covet. He was doing that too. So guess what? Laban's as guilty as all the rest of us are. What do you think? Jacob's turn to have his say-so, to have his 2 cents worth. And Laban doesn't speak in this cycle. Laban went all through all of Jacob's stuff, looking for things, and Rachel pretends to be unable to get up from her camel saddle where she had hidden the idols. So, what is my sin? What have you found that I have stolen? Jacob is wanting to know. This almost sounds like President Trump to me. He's the most transparent president that we've ever had. Look, go ahead and look. You know, you're not going to find anything, right? When the loss occurred, I absorbed it. Did you know that President Trump is not even taking a salary for being president of the United States? 400, yeah, 450, is that what it is, Kimberly? Yeah. What? When the loss occurred, he absorbed it all. I'm sure his Trump corporation has been. The work has been difficult. I don't know when the man sleeps. I followed you in the agreement that you and I established. He's trying to get people to agree anyway. I just thought it was interesting. Unless God had been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. That's exactly what the Democrats would like to do to our president, just shut him down. And may it be true that God rebuked them last night, huh? Yeah, at any rate. When he doesn't produce anything, what's my sin? Oh, I forgot to hide some slides. Okay, never mind. Okay. Jacob and Laban are going to make a covenant together here. Abraham and Abimelech did, and it was probably a good idea. And now Jacob and Laban are going to make it's a really good idea that they do this. Let's finish this out, 43 to 55.
Laban answered Jacob, "The women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet, what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So, Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar Shahadutha, and Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. This is why it is called Galeed. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. Laban also said to Jacob, here is the heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar on my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home.
So all is well? Supposedly? It would appear so. It would appear so, wouldn't it? Laban's term, you stay out of my territory and I'll stay out of yours. They're coming to terms with the fact that they just don't trust each other. They don't like each other very much. Okay? They admit that they are not going to come to some resolve. They agree to stay away from each other. Maybe Nancy Pelosi and President Trump will have that kind of a... We can only hope, right? Okay. I think, to me, it almost seems like this is a covenant in reverse, where they're agreeing to leave each other alone. Usually when you make a covenant with somebody, if one party gets in trouble, you're going to come to defend them. And here they're agreeing, it's never going to quite fit. It's not a good fit, and we're just going to agree to stay away from each other. Are those agreements still in place today? Sure. Where's Gilead? Gilead, isn't that up on, it means heap, the word means heap. Is it up on the Golan Heights? I'm not.
It said what mountain they were on.
Yeah, Gilead.
It said he made it to the mountain.
The mountains of Gilead. I wonder if it's like up on the north of the Golan in Syria or something.
Is that across on the other side of the Sea of Galilee?
I think so.
Because there's a name, something with a G that's on the other side of the Sea of Galilee.
Okay, let's go back to that map that I had here real quick. Anybody got a map, a good map in your back of your Bible? Myra, I never got you a Bible, I'm sorry. Look, we've got words like, look at here, here's Haran, Aleppo, does that sound familiar? Aleppo. Elba, Hamath, that should sound, I think it's up here. I bet it's right up in here. That would be about 7 days. Here's Ramoth Gilead. That's not the same one. That's way down here. Oh, maybe it is. It's Damascus. If this is it, look at there. It would be right on the eastern side of the Golan Heights. About where it's at, you think? Yeah? Oh, good. Thank you, Bernie. All right, so we're on the outer edge of the Golan Heights here.
North and east of Jericho?
Yep, Jericho's down here. And here's Jericho right here. At the head of the Dead Sea, and then Ramoth Gilead up there. That makes sense. Okay. All right, now, do we all realize that God is well able to take care of his kids? I think so. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, okay. So, he's well able to take care of his kids, and the mechanism, this is a pop quiz, the mechanism that is used between God and his children, what stands between God and his children? Don't tell me Jesus. Don't tell me that. What is it that he uses? Huh? Okay, but what is the thing that he's made an he's made covenant, thank you. He's made a covenant with his people. And as long as his people are abiding by the terms of a covenant, just as these guys are agreeing to stay away from each other, that was a covenant. But God made a covenant with Abraham. It's very, very strong, and I'm telling you, it's right here today. And if you look in the book of Deuteronomy, and you look at the chapters like 28, 29, 30, you will see the blessings for keeping the covenant. There are 14 of them spelled out there. And the curses that will come upon a people if they don't keep the covenant. And there's I can't remember how many verses there are, 50 something? A bunch, many more than the 14 of the blessings. But the blessings are stupendous. And when you read through these blessings, you would wonder, well, who wouldn't want to serve a God like this? These are God's people. You're part of God's people. You're part of the covenant. Where's Gilead? Yeah. Yep. Bernie found it on Google. My daughter-in-law, I was telling Myra this the other day, and I think I'll use this example. When she was a young mother and she had 3 little kids and pregnant with her 4th one, and would go to the grocery store with these little guys, because she did, and she was a homeschool mom, and she said, other women would look at me like I was crazy. What are you doing with 4 children? You're going to have another baby? I was just pushing the cart along. But these little kids, this is how she would train them. She was a good mom. My son and daughter-in-law knew how to parent kids. Got out of the car. Here they are, all these little 2 little boys and a little girl, and she's pregnant with the fourth little boy, 3rd little boy, 4th child. She's pushing the cart along. You know where these kids would be? One would be in the seat here, the little girl, but the 2 little boys, they had absolutely understood orders that they were to hang on to the side of that cart. Stay with Mom. You just walk along with Mom. We're going to push the cart along, and we'll get the stuff done. Away they go. Through the grocery store. And those kids didn't have a whole lot of that. Didn't have a whole lot of that going on, because the kids knew that what Mom said, she meant. Hang on to the cart. That's exactly how we should be with God's covenant. God, go with me. I'm going with you. I'm walking with you. I'm hanging on to your covenant. As long as I'm staying attached to that covenant, I know that I'm under his protection. If I let go of that covenant and I decide to go off here and just do anything I want to do, I'm on my own, baby. That makes sense?
And you were really
Yes.
I'm just thinking of the other place. Now, they didn't make a heap of stones when they left the Red Sea, but they did make, there was another heap in the middle of,
Yes.
was it Jericho?
Middle of the river, yeah.
When they left the wilderness and went into the promised.
Yes, and they crossed the Jordan. Yes, they absolutely did.
One in the Jordan River, one on the
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
One for each tribe. Okay, so what I want you to know is God chose to put his name on Jerusalem, right? He chose to put his name there. These are his people, his covenant people, right? So what happened that Jerusalem got destroyed right down to the nubs? Not once, but twice. Why? Huh? A little louder for the tape.
Because they stopped keeping the covenant.
They stopped keeping the covenant. They disregarded the covenant. They disdained the covenant. They thought it wasn't important. They thought they could go ahead and all these other nations around us have other gods. Why can't we just bring them into Jerusalem? Why can't we just bring the graven images into them? Why can't we offer sacrifices to these other gods? They're doing it. Let's do it. That's why the prophets wrote the books of prophecy, to warn them. Yes, ma'am.
And Solomon gave him a great example to lead. I mean, he just obeyed the covenant.
Oh, absolutely.
Great.
Solomon he was a nut. He got so smart and so wealthy, he got to be a nut, which can happen to people, I guess. But at any rate, the point I want to make is that the city of Jerusalem, the city of the great king, was destroyed twice. All the prophets that wrote told the people that that was going to happen. And you want to know something? May I? Sure. It wasn't just the prophets of the Old Testament that were saying that. It was the writers of the New Testament that were saying that too. They were warning the people. Yeshua was crucified in 28 AD. We have proof of that. He was crucified in 28 AD. The temple came down once again in 70 AD. That would be about 42 years later. There's something that happened in those 40 years between the people who believed him and the people who wouldn't believe him. The temple came down. The city was destroyed. The city wasn't there. The city wasn't there. The city wasn't even there. And the Jewish people certainly weren't there. Maybe a couple of crumbs here and there, but the city, that was not a Jewish city until what happened in 1948 to 1967. He started bringing the people back to the land, and in 1967 he gave them back the city. Let's see, that would be like 2,000 years. Between 70 AD and 67. Let's just say it started at 67.
It did start.
The whole siege of Jerusalem by the Romans started in 67. And they didn't get it back until 1967. Do you know how significant that is? Do you know that the entire New Testament was written before 70 AD? Do you know that all these apostles and writers and letters were being distributed amongst the people, were being distributed to them before 70 AD to warn them that the city was coming down, that the temple was coming down? Do we realize? We don't realize that. That's what the last year and a half have been about for Myra and I, since we were over there. It's kind of like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know. Well, of course it is. When you start reading these letters that had been circulated amongst all these people through these lenses, it starts to make sense. There's good information in here, absolutely good information. It teaches us about Jesus. It teaches us about Yeshua. But it's more than that. You're all looking at me like, what? Well, I tell you what, let's just go and we're going to read a couple verses from the Haftorah and the New Testament portion. Here, right here, just look up at the screen. You can just look at it here. Jeremiah chapter 30, verses 10 and 11. That's all we'll do. Let me see. Terry, can you read that?
So do not be afraid, Jacob, my servant. Do not be dismayed, Israel, declares the Lord. I will surely save you out of a distant place, your descendants from the land of their exile. Jacob will again have peace and security, and no one will make him afraid. I am with you and will save you, declares the Lord. Though I completely destroy all the nations among which I scatter you, I will not completely destroy you. I will discipline you, but only in due measure. I will not let you go entirely unpunished.
This is Jeremiah. He's writing in like 605 something, 600 BC or so. He's writing to the people of Jerusalem. This is before the Jerusalem goes down the first time. That's who the immediate audience is. We don't read that in terms of that. We read that in terms of us because my extensive lens glasses thinks that's written to me primarily. And it is written to me. But it was originally written to the people of Jerusalem in about 600 BC. Before Jerusalem comes back. He's letting them know, look at this. Your descendants from the land of their exile. The people were already in exile in Babylon. right? He's talking to the kings and the priests in Jerusalem. Your descendants, Jacob will again have peace and security. They don't have it. They didn't have it then, but they will have it again. And no one will make him afraid. I will not let you go entirely unpunished. Unpunished for what? For leaving the covenant. You should see what the people of Jerusalem were doing. It was bad. It was bad. That whole thing with Tammuz and the Easter Bunny and all that stuff, that was going on back then. Tammuz? Okay. Let's see what James, the brother of God, the brother of Yeshua. Okay? Myra, can you read that? You got good enough eyes?
James 4:1-4. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desire that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have, because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you think Scripture says without reason that he jealously longs for the Spirit he has caused to dwell in us? But he gives us more grace. That is why Scripture says, God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
That's a good message, right? It's a good message for us today. But it wasn't written primarily for us today. It was written for those people back then. The Romans were coming, right? And Jerusalem was about to be destroyed for the second time. They had it, let's just say it this way. Between the time Yeshua was, his resurrection, he went back to heaven, until the time that Jerusalem was going to be under siege again, there was going to be 40 years. They had 40 years to get the job done. Does that sound familiar? 40 years in the wilderness? 40 for that first generation of the nation? Right?
Yeah.
To get to the city? And now it's 40 years at the end of that time period before Jerusalem came down again. And they wouldn't be back until 1967. Our time. That's our generation. Now there's probably a message in there for our generation too. Right? Make sense? Makes sense. Now, do you want to buy our book? Anyway. So this whole thing about these ladies standing by their man. Stand by your man. That's an important message for wives to their husbands, but also for the bride of Yeshua, if you will, to him. And for Israel, for America, standing with Israel. There's something really significant about when Mr. Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem. It was on the 70th birthday, right? And then what happened? That was in December, and then what happened? He declared Jerusalem was the capital of Israel in December, and on their birthday, on their 70th birthday, he moved they opened up the embassy.
Recognized it as
In December, and
it's been declared.
Right. He recognized, America was the first one to recognize it. And the nations around the world are now lining themselves up. Sheep nations, goat nations, sheep nations, goat nations, as to who's going to recognize the legitimacy of Israel. It's amazing how this pattern is all fitting together. Okay? All right, so America and Israel. America is like Israel's back porch. Backyard or something. I love this picture. I found it this morning. Isn't that beautiful? America and Israel, they just fit together. Just a second. Stand by your man. Here we go. Look at this. So we need to make sure that we're standing by this guy and we're not letting go of that grocery cart or that covenant that he has connected us to. It's there for your protection, and it's there for your benefit, and it's there for your blessing.